Good?
Yeah.
AJ Kozak. All right, man, we're getting into this. AJ, I found on Instagram, guys. Found him on TikTok, and he does the best Gary Vee impression. Gary Vee, a freaking hero on this podcast, man. We had Sean Malay here. I saw that you were talking with Sean Malay at Vee Con. So, AJ, what's been up, man? I know you've been in the comedy game for a while, but where are you coming from right now?
Now I am coming from my hometown in New Jersey, where I just moved back to. I was in Los Angeles for the last 10 years.
Okay.
Mostly doing music for film, television, commercials. I play in a band called Distant Cousins, and we've been in the grind on all things music for the last like 7 years or so. And I went to the Berklee College of Music. I studied music there, and then began doing music for film and television. And I write for some theme song stuff and TV shows. I work with DreamWorks and Netflix and some of the guys in the game. And that's been my sort of day job for the last decade or so. And then comedy was this like neglected child of mine. Like I always had it in me, but I wasn't nurturing it enough because there wasn't so much of an outlet for it while I was busy doing the music stuff. And the music stuff was keeping me busy. So like in show business, generally, like you have these different lanes that people do, and they don't always overlap.
Yeah.
Until social media comes around and I start using Instagram and then primarily TikTok when it was sort of fresh and not a household name yet. I started just on a daily basis consistently posting some music stuff and then a lot of comedy stuff, impressions on a daily basis. And as that started to pick up steam organically, I began building this nice little audience and started doing more impressions. And one day I threw up an impression of a certain someone who you mentioned at the top of the show.
Yes.
And that one gave me a little TikTok moment there that got a lot of attention.
So when did you actually move back to the East Coast? Pretty recently?
This past summer, last summer, it's probably almost a year now, but in the end of last summer, I moved back.
Have you found that New York/New Jersey, where you're living, has been better for the comedy scene?
You know, it's hard to say in the age of like COVID and post-COVID where everything was bad. And my experience in the LA comedy scene kind of came in the aftermath of COVID, finding, you know, the first rooms that started opening up. Because what happened was when I started to get some attention on TikTok, that was February of 2020. So I was like, okay, I'm ready to take some of this stuff out and started to do more stand-up.
Right. So that's also like a perfect time to start TikTok right then, right? Like a month before quarantine.
Yeah, but in terms of a comedy scene, I was ready to break into and start doing, because I had been working clubs on the music side for years. So I'd been doing that, and I had been playing and performing live for a long time. But stand-up itself, I hadn't done a lot of it yet, but I was ready to sort of start putting together everything I was, and everything I was coming up with and doing it and taking it to the stage, and then
Dude, that's hilarious, because February 2020, I had told you initially just quickly, I was working at my dad's company at that time for 5.5 years, a real estate company. I was a property manager. I basically just be all over buildings, making sure HVACs are working, making sure everything's right with the building, whatever rent's paid. So February 2020, like that's when I was ready to jump into comedy full time, do the podcast, the vlog, and comedy shows. And then I was like, holy shit, I guess I need to stay for another year, help my dad out. Not making an excuse in that way,
but you
like,
opened the door in the cliff and you were like,
dude, literally, I was doing this podcast. I was kind of ready to go. And then, another year went by. But May last year, so May 2021 is when I started to do comedy full time. Right. So was there like a moment where you like got TikTok and you were like, wow, I can really do this like as a full-time living job situation?
I would say that what TikTok taught me was the power of building your own audience. And
for sure.
I think for a long time, I looked at social media as purely a promotional tool to say like, hey, come check out my stuff that I'm doing over here. And I would put my energies into things, and I would look at it as, I put all this time and energy into a video or something that when I post it, I'd assume that you post it, it goes viral if it's good, and then you get all this attention. And then I realized with TikTok that it's not a commercial, it's the show. Like TikTok, it's not like the promotion. People come to TikTok to be entertained, not as a means to find your entertainment elsewhere.
Right.
So once I became consistent with that, I used it as sort of I approached it more with a fitness approach, like show up every day, post consistently, and don't post, hey guys, I'm a comedian, come check me out. It's like, no, post something directly entertaining, because that's what people are coming to these platforms for, to be entertained. These are broadcasters, and you have to be the show, not the commercial.
Do you find that when you put these TikToks up, like the audience kind of came naturally and organically, or did you feel like, oh, maybe I do want to also promote myself here, like come to my show at this particular time?
I found that when I began approaching it without the expectation of getting something in return from an audience or a viewer, but rather it sounds like that generic sort of entrepreneurial thing, like just give value. And it is like sort of the Gary Vee thing. Give a lot of value without expectation.
Well, how do you say that?
Well, honestly, if you're promoting shit with expectation, you're going to fucking lose, right? Like, promote, and it's not about the money. It's not about the fucking money, okay? You want to lose everything and have fucking humility. On some real shit, Ted, seriously. Right, that was your problem. You were giving with expectation. God. Right, and that's why you're gonna fucking lose, dick. But in truth, taking the advice to heart, putting stuff out there. What I realized was, the first Gary Vee video I did that went semi-viral, I had already been posting for like 2 months on TikTok with very little going on. I was just doing it to do it as a daily, 5 days a week, get into a consistency about it.
And then one day you were just in your car and you just decided, oh, Gary Vee's a guy that I could potentially make fun of.
He came across as an option like anybody else I was feasting on. I was just like, I'm just so sick of fucking 20, 40-year-olds complaining that they're not killing it, right? Like, if you want to win, fucking move to Louisiana and start a fucking peanut butter brand. Right? Like, fucking peanut butter. And I wasn't even going to post it. I was just like, I think I could get this better. I was like, I think I could get this down better. Yeah. And I kind of just, and I posted it. And then like hour later, the rest is history. It started to just kind of
How did that video do, by the way?
So like I had been getting a couple of 100 views on videos before then, maybe one that got to 10K, one that got to 80 on the, and this was I don't know, hundreds of videos, like a bunch. I don't know, 5 days a week for 2 months. Do the math. It was a lot. It was a bunch of videos and a couple would pop off, and you don't see these overnight things. You're just like, okay, great. That kind of felt neat. But then this one, I refreshed an hour later, 10K. Refreshed 25K. And every time it was like 1,000 views every time I refreshed the video. And it would just go. So I was having like a moment there, and I'm like, huh. And then Barstool Sports reached out and asked if I was the originator of the video. Can we have the footage? We'd like to feature it. And they featured it. This was like on a Thursday, and then Barstool featured it the next day to like 7 million people on Instagram. And Gary noticed that one himself. And they said, this guy's literally Gary Vee. Went to Twitter, went to everything. And I wouldn't say that anything blew up overnight, but it did go from not feeling like I had an audience to feeling like I had an audience. So like from a couple hundred people following, maybe 2,000 people were following. And then when I was posting, I was like, okay, I'm sensing a relationship here that's forming, that there are people on the other end of this when I put something out there. And that was nice. And that's sort of all of that is laying the foundation to eventually going full time and having an audience that can sustain you. But even that takes a much longer time and much longer game than people realize, because everyone can give you a like and a follow and a this and a that and a lot of good feedback, which is great. And then that next level or that next step, the next evolution of what you're doing as a creative is getting people who are not only followers but supporters,
to stick with you.
Yeah, the 1,000 true fans who will show up for shows, pay hard tickets, and contribute on Patreon. I'm not even at that point yet. I mean, I'm at the point where I'm building the base, and then we will start to see how I will convert in out of the thousands upon thousands and hundreds of thousands of followers that are out there, like who's there to
like
show
a headlining gig or something.
Yeah,
like
a headlining gig, and even people who would become patrons on Patreon, things like that. But I find that whenever I dig too deep on that point or get impatient with that, the feedback I get from people who have done it, they're like, you're doing the right thing, just keep doing it. And eventually, it's not like it just happens for no reason. It's like eventually you will discover how to monetize this audience. If you try to do it too early, if you try to manufacture, you can ask, you can try things. There are techniques, there are things that people do, which I'm still figuring out. But to answer your question, like that's how I discovered it can be full time. It's just a long game. And in entertainment, as opposed to other industries, it's sort of like money follows the success, not the other way around. So it's not like you're paid and then you're successful because you're paid. It's like you're successful and then eventually people start to contribute to that success. In other industries, it's like, I feel like it's a little more even, where as you rise amongst the ranks, you get maybe a salary in a more structured environment that reflects you're rising up the hierarchy. And in entertainment, you get this perception of success where you're like, man, you're killing it, you're doing this and that, man. And then people think you're getting all of this financial reward for it, and you will, but there's a delay. There's that,
Yeah.
there's that building the audience, and then you start to see the rewards, and you're planting all of these seeds, and it's like you're farming, and you're planting these seeds, then it rains, and you're like, okay, and then these crops form everywhere, and you even forgot where you planted them, but you're like, oh, because I've been tending to this field for a long time.
So I'm not sure how familiar you are with maybe Sam Ramsdell. Have you ever heard of Sam?
No.
So Sam came on the podcast before. She had a viral video during the quarantine. I think it was probably right around like June of 2020. She has the world's biggest mouth. So she went on TikTok and she was like, I want to see your cheeks glow red, something like that, some video like that. And it got 80 million views. And then from that point, she kind of discovered her audience. And now she's able to like sell out shows like at City Winery, Wall Street Theater, all over the place. But it seemed like her TikTok kind of grew that authentic audience in order to like sell out shows and stuff like that. Do you find that more people are noticing you for your comedy or for like a specific TikTok that you've done?
More people, I think people are noticing me generally because of the TikTok stuff. Obviously, like my Jordan Peterson impressions and Gary Vee bits and stuff, that got me to Vee Con. So everyone at VEECON knew who I was.
Yeah, and you definitely got to talk about that.
Yeah. But that got me. When people come up to me who do recognize me, it's like, I love your TikToks.
Sure.
They're not naming a TikTok.
Okay.
I saw that one thing because I've had some videos that pop off to a few million along the way. But mostly, one thing I credit myself with is being very consistent. And I'm always, on a daily basis, putting out one or to several videos a day.
Yep.
And there are people who I talk to, other fellow ones who are like, man, like that talk about and have credited me with output that I'm very consistent on.
Yeah, man. I checked out your YouTube channel. Like, I thought I had a lot of YouTube videos. Yeah. I have around 400. You have about 500, man.
So I haven't even counted.
Yeah, dude. So, when you click on your thing, it says how many. But like, just in general, like, I know how hard I've been going on YouTube the past like 2.5 years. But to see somebody who's gone equally even harder,
right?
It's definitely a great thing to see. So the consistency and the grit has gotten you to a point where, where do you think it takes off from here? Going to Vee Con, an enormous event, you were on stage in front of, I don't know how many people, 15,000, something like that?
I don't know.
Maybe that
thousands,
many? Okay.
Thousands, yeah.
But like having the respect from Gary Vee and other people who work for Gary Vee, obviously. So what do you think the trajectory is?
Yeah. So the funny thing about the new media space that we're in, like the TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, social media space, as opposed to legacy media, is you don't really know where you stand.
What do you mean by what's legacy media?
As in, like, getting on a network show. One's big break in the 90s and 2000s was, I got cast on the show and now everyone knows who I am.
Yeah, and then you're on the show after that.
And then you do press, and then people come and take pictures with you, and then people maybe show up for you. You kind of have a better sense of where you stood in one place and then where you stand afterwards in terms of how known you are and where your ability to, say, draw an audience, or how much attention you're getting in terms of the public space with people, like your audience. You had a sense then of why and how to quantify it, because like you're on a hit show and now everybody knows you. That makes sense. But with TikTok and YouTube, this stuff is all being out there. You're putting all this stuff out there, and it's a little mysterious as to who is consuming it. You can go through the metrics and things and find out where people are, but people come up to me. Like, I wonder sometimes when I've been at, I was in the city, I was like in New York City and at some comedy show, and 5 people came up to me. Hey man, love your and I was very surprised. I was like, oh, because like you see comments, you see flesh and blood human beings commenting, but you don't know where your audience is. It's very dispersed. It's out there in the internets. You don't know where they are. So what's interesting trajectory-wise is at one point in time, and then like post VEECON, which we can talk about, where everybody knew who I was, it was like, can I headline and sell out such and such room? Or, like you feel unknown because you've been posting from your bedroom, or I've been posting from my studio, my home studio, doing this completely on my own as a solo operation with no infrastructure. And yet these platforms are allowing the content I put out to reach hundreds and thousands and millions of people. But to aggregate them and to connect the dots to bring people in person, it's sort of unknown. Maybe I could, because I've spoken to friends of mine in the TikTok world who are, now headlining and doing the things you're talking about. So I'm in that space now where right now for me, I'm just making sure I'm ready for that in terms of, being prepared with material and
Totally.
and a set that's ready to go, building up from a tight 7 to a tight 10 to a tight 15 along the way, because I don't want to be in front of a whole audience of people that I filled up a room and at least not have my best foot forward.
Yeah,
Like,
I think that's something I think that sometimes happens with people who build a social media presence super fast. They'll get to 5 million on TikTok, and then all of a sudden a club wants them to headline for 500 people. Do you find that you're balancing the social media platforms kind of the same, or do you kind of lean towards one? Like, which one do you think gives you more exposure?
I mean, in terms of numbers, I have the most amount of followers on TikTok, but I don't know what a follower means on TikTok value-wise in terms of if that person is. I think in the hierarchy, a subscriber on YouTube is probably the most committed follower.
I would say that too.
They like each a subscriber versus a follower on Instagram or TikTok, they mean kind of different things, because if someone goes out of their way to describe on YouTube, they've searched for you or they've come across you in a suggested thing in a different way than on TikTok, which has a different algorithm and structure to it. TikTok is putting things in front of people. So they're like, oh, that was funny, follow, and then they'll forget about it. But YouTube requires a little more of people seeking out specific things, and it's a search engine. It's not the way TikTok operates, which is putting stuff in front of people.
And like longer attention spans.
Attention spans, you could put up higher resolution things. Right now, I'm focused most on the work and building the audience, and even building up a live set that I feel comfortable filling a room with to present to. Because I don't want to do any of that out of order. I wouldn't want to, put all my energies into filling up a room and headlining and not feeling comfortable enough or prepared enough with what I think is my best work. Because stand-up is a whole other thing. Yeah. And I think getting in that place prematurely, it's not the worst thing in the world, but you want to retain that audience too. You want them coming back. And I've always been very prepared in terms of, especially live, from the music side of things. And you have the advantage with music of rehearsing and getting to hear how everything's going to sound beforehand. But with comedy, it's a different beast where you have to put it through these sort of simulations of live mics and shows and small sets to really get a joke to its final. And that's been the hardest part of stand-up versus music is with music, you pretty much have an idea of what's going to go down. But with comedy,
you never know. It depends on the crowd.
You never know with the crowd. And like, you have to like refine a joke in front of people. It's as if inviting everybody who's going to come to your show to your rehearsals. It's like, God, I can't imagine doing that as a band, but that's just the nature of the beast.
I see you also have a podcast. How long have you been doing that?
I think we started that also last summer, or end of last summer.
And what was the kind of vision for that podcast?
So me and a good friend of mine, one of my closest friends from childhood, growing up, have always talked about it, but he was always East Coast and I was West Coast.
The Buckle Up podcast.
Yes, Buckle Up with Mike and Ami, and we'd always had good rapport conversationally to talk about things for long periods of time. And you know how it is. You're just like... one of the themes and features of our podcast is the creative process, and also how to turn things that exist in your head into tangible, real things. Because so many times we've all been on the side of, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that, I have these ideas, I have this vision, and it just stays there and it just grows and weighs you down. So we're all about trying to take that out of your head and put it into something. So the first step was actually doing the podcast and not talking about it. So it's a lot of kibitzing and schmoozing and talking.
Kibitzing, I love that.
Yeah. So that's the nature of it. It's me and him, and we're having some guests on too, and a lot of people who come from our community, like the Orthodox Jewish community in the tri-state area, who have like gone out, who have done things outside of the box a little bit in terms of creative pursuits and endeavors.
So your family is Orthodox?
Yeah.
I'm Jewish as well. Amen. Vayisa Yaakov, Ragla Vayelek Artza Berekedem, Vaya Vichine, Vaeo Basade, Vichine Sham, Slosha. It's like part of my Torah portion that I still remember. Where in Jersey did you grow up? Englewood.
Yeah.
All right, nice. So I was born in New Brunswick, spent 6 weeks there in Princeton, and then I moved to Manhattan afterwards.
Right.
So where did you go to college?
Berkeley College of Music.
Oh, yeah, you said that. Sorry, initially. But
that might have been before the pod.
But but you know people who went to BU, and we both know similar people. So let's talk about VEECON, man, because that is a huge moment. And just even watching the footage from VEECON, it looked insane. So kind of talk about that and just describe what VEECON really is.
Sure. So this year... media icon, social media star Gary Vaynerchuk launched his inaugural conference, which was centered around his NFT project called Vee Friends. So Gary Vaynerchuk is, for those of you who don't know, he's like a branding entrepreneur, consultant, runs VaynerMedia, a massive ad agency, and has put out loads of content with advice on how to hustle and how to get started.
Does he remind you of like a Tony Robbins?
A little different. I mean, Tony Robbins is very much, self-help guru stuff. His stuff's slightly fluffier and like touchy-feely kind of like I think the content. I mean, but the content is slightly different theme-wise and flavor and style-wise. Gary's a little bit more
like get off your ass.
I mean, like, yeah. And I also feel like some of his stuff is psychologically oriented.
If you want to change a negative mindset, look in the mirror and say, stop. The number one thing that's holding you back is a false sense of negativity.
So Tony's doing that.
Be positive, right?
And Gary, initially, his brand was a little more about stop fucking complaining and get out there and fucking hustle. Stop complaining. You can Netflix and chill in your 40s. I think you should focus on building up your business, right? Like, and then like, and a lot of Gary stuff is really centered around utilizing new social media platforms and getting out there and finding your voice and doing those things. They're colleagues. They've done stuff together.
Yeah.
So maybe it's a similar space. One thing that's unique in terms of Gary is that he does give away a ton of things for free, and you'll never find at the end of a Gary video, click the link below if you want to buy my course on self-help startups, because that'll fucking help you crush it. Like, he sells books, he does keynotes, but most of the stuff doesn't come with a caveat of like, now you have to click the link below to buy the thing. So that's kind of your indicator that a lot of it's not so suspect, like he's just putting out he's pretty generous with his advice. There's just tons of content to consume. And I've always found that like, that's an interesting, unique approach. That's sort of your indicator whether he's, people question, oh, there's haters out there and stuff, but like most of the stuff is centered around stop watching my fucking videos and do shit.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to VEECON.
Who reached out to you to go to VEECON initially?
So in the process of, what's interesting is after my first Gary V video kind of popped off, people in that social media space of like meme accounts and stuff who had big meme accounts reached out and said, you should lean into this, man. This is really funny. It gave me like, because I was ready to sort of diversify and show all these different things, but it's like,
a lot of different impressions.
Yeah, like when you have a hit song, like play the hit song. So I started doing all sorts of different sketches, parodies of Gary V, which eventually caught the attention of the team, Team Gary V.
The 1:37 p.m.
1:37 is like his more, it's not centered around Gary V himself. That's more general media stuff. Okay. But Team Gary V is all things Gary V. There's like VaynerMedia, which is his ad agency. And then there's Team Gary V, which is his content, like his, I guess, social media brand. And they started liking and sharing stuff, and members of that team would reach out to me, just like, just rapport back and forth, stuff like that. There have been talks about collaborations eventually as I was just continually putting out stuff. So it kind of became undeniable. And then eventually, I don't think VEECON was even developed yet as it was. I don't know when the idea of VEECON came about, but as it did, I said, oh, there's a big conference coming up. That would be interesting. But I sort of just was like left it alone. And I had a rapport with some of the members of the team. And then someone who was coordinating the event reached out about this idea. And I pitched also some of my ideas about what would be funny. And together, really from DM Instagramming to emails to discussions, we thought of this idea of having this big opening thing, and Gary was very into it. I think Gary I didn't pitch this to Gary. I think he was like, I'd love to bring these guys. I think it was his idea initially. I don't know the exact source of it, but everybody was on board to do this big opening of VEECON, in which me and another impersonator, Nima Naz, who's actually performing tonight and I might be doing a spot also.
Oh, here in the city?
In the city, yeah.
Okay.
He's Toronto-based, but he also was known online for doing Gary Vee impressions. And we hadn't met yet, but we finally connected over Zoom, and I put together this opening sketch, and we opened the inaugural VEECON conference, all centered around Gary Vee's NFT projects called Vee Friends. So there's all of his fans and people there who all are part of the Vee Friends community. And they said, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome CEO of VaynerMedia and Vee Friends, Gary Vaynerchuk. First guy comes out. It's not Gary. It's Nima Naz. He's like, hey, everyone,
I'm the real Gary.
I came out, hold on 1 second, fucker. He's like, I'm Gary Vee Series 2. I came out, hold on 1 second, fucker. I'm Gary Vee Series 3. you know, and then we started, you know, we bit each other's nails. We did a whole thing.
Yeah.
So there'll be more footage rolling out. I'm just unveiling throughout the weeks ahead.
Amazing.
But then Gary, and then at the end of it, I was like, honestly, like between the two of us, this is amazing. It's almost like who needs the original Gary Vee, right? He comes out, and then there's three of us on stage.
What an entrance! Did you meet him before you hopped on stage, though?
Yeah. We had like a green room powwow. I just posted a video today.
What was that like?
You know, Gary is one of the few, I guess you'd call it, celebrities that I've met that, you know, when you meet a celebrity in real life, and all of a sudden they just kind of look different, act different, not in a bad way, but just you're so used to seeing them dolled up, you know, after makeup, you know, in their element, from like behind the screen, and they have a certain look to them, and then you see them, you're like, okay, that's definitely Brad Pitt, but it's just not quite what I expected. Like, you know, he's not on production, you know what I mean? And then you meet them, so it just feels a little different. And Gary, I would have to say, was not that. Gary is exactly what you're watching, and then when you meet him, it was pretty close to what I expected, you know, and in a good way. Like you're like, oh, okay, it wasn't like all up in my face, but he could tone it down. But it was that what's coming across as genuine on your phone is kind of what it feels like in the room too, where you know what I mean? And I was expecting not necessarily that, just because of encounters with people where it just always feels a little bit different than you're used to seeing them. They capture a certain essence of Gary, I think, in Team Gary Vee and all the stuff he puts out. That's pretty true to form.
Was he super supportive of you doing impressions of him and then being at VEECON and just holding the, I guess, like the Gary Vee kind of personality accountable for how he really is? Like people who are watching him are like, oh, wow, Gary's really like that.
Oh, I mean, I did it to his face. Yeah. And he was laughing and loving it. I mean, he's a Jersey boy like me. It's all, we all just dig at each other. So
it's hard to find people like that, man, especially since, like, I mean, to start an inaugural event and have two people on stage making fun of you, obviously in a fun way. I mean, it's gotta say something about your personality, you know? Like Gary loves the haters. I mean, he even talks about that. Like,
I have empathy for my haters, right?
I remember even seeing Gary videos probably like, I don't know, when did he first start making a real appearance on social media? Maybe like 3 or 4 years ago? Yeah. Something like that, definitely before the pandemic. Do you think that starting your TikTok before the pandemic, like, was a value to you? Like, did you find any success on TikTok before the pandemic started?
Well, I started doing stuff consistently, I think it was like 2018, 2019, but it was all scattered and there was no real consistency to the actual content I was doing. Right. I was just trying everything, right? I was just trying things. So I do like live looping music stuff. Like,
what's that?
You know, like, and like I can loop and do all this. Like, it was musical stuff because that's the kind of stuff I was doing. Yeah. So I would put stuff like that out. I'd throw up a GoPro because I don't know how to shoot. So I would just say, oh, GoPro is by default a cool looking shot. It makes everything look kind of cool. And it was this like really painful experience of throwing up a GoPro. I didn't know anything about frame rates and all these kind of things, and running into those early mistakes, getting through that like painful part of something new. I'd put it up resting on a thing to try to catch me doing this. So in like 2019, I was throwing up anything I could to just try to start to utilize these platforms a little differently. And that was definitely pre-pandemic. But like I said, that was Instagram first.
Is that like DJing?
Looping?
Yeah.
Slightly like DJing, except you're creating everything in real time. You ever see like Reggie Watts or a Beardy Man, and there's a few other live looper guys. DJ stuff, you're working with pre-recorded music and kind of triggering different things.
You know, maybe I've also seen stuff like that on TikTok where there'll be like the best songs of the 90s, and then they'll do 1 through 10, and he'll loop maybe back like into the song.
But so with live looping, you're creating everything in real time. So you'll be like, and then it's all builds and builds and builds, and you can play with it. And eventually I'll work that into my stand-up somehow to make like Reggie Watts style. He's an inspiration of mine.
What does your stand-up look like right now?
It's pretty raw. It's just me doing some shtick. It's impressions and bits and jokes, and it's that standard kind of stuff, you know? I'm in that process where like I am writing every single day because it starts with that. And I heard like I heard an interesting... Well, just to answer your question before, in terms of like pre-pandemic stuff, the TikTok stuff started... when I started doing TikTok consistently, that was probably 2 months. That was late 2019 to early 2020 into 2020, which was leading to the pandemic. Nobody knew that. So I was just, I don't remember when I started doing TikTok consistently, but it was around that time, 2019, late into 2020. And then 2 months into like I want to say February of 2020. That's when that Gary Vee video happened. And I was ready to start doing a ton of different, like really, it gave me that sort of confidence. Be like, wow, like people are really responding to the impressions. It's amazing.
You think timing was on your side there to start right before everybody was stuck in their house for the next 3 months?
Yes and no. Like, again, I was itching to go out and perform because I really identify as a performer and uncomfortable performing, and I couldn't. So I was like, oh.
Yeah.
But it did help me channel all my creative energies into making these videos and doing it. And maybe because there was an audience at home just on their phones at a disproportionate level, I was hitting up Clubhouse rooms, trolling as Gary and Alex Jones and Jordan Peterson.
What the fuck happened to Clubhouse, by the way? I thought that was going to be the new thing.
It was during the pandemic,
Yeah, for a
but Twitter
moment.
Spaces, I think, kind of.
And then they were like,
Co-opted it.
they were like doing an invite only, so you thought it was exclusive to like do Clubhouse and stuff like that. So what do you think the best social media app is in order to get your, I don't want to say message across, but maybe get your personality across?
MySpace. Absolutely fucking MySpace. Nostalgia, bro. It was huge. I've been saying that.
Dude, I remember that. You be on my top 8 to throw you up right now.
Yeah. I as Gary Vee, I tell people, are you posting on LinkedIn? Great. TikTok, good. MySpace? Gotta go to fucking MySpace.
Fucking Venmo?
Nostalgia. Dude, post on Venmo. Content. There's no content on Venmo.
He's like, I banged a chick off Venmo once.
Undersaturated. Post a video on Venmo. Figure it out. Figure it out. What's the best platform? I guess it depends.
Yeah.
It depends on what you do. I guess the best platform is the one you can use consistently.
Well,
that
let's
comes
say for
naturally to you.
comics. Let's say for comics.
Oh, for comedy,
you think?
I definitely think TikTok is great for
I
comedy.
think it's like the stand-up clips, it's the impressions, it's that 10-minute impression that you need to give off.
So there's always like a dominant one that everybody's on right now, and it seems like TikTok is the dominant one.
I agree.
It seems like Facebook is the last in line, and it's for boomers. And maybe if you're 30 and up, you still have your account and occasionally check it.
Right.
But for content, Facebook seems very weak and very not organic. They put a lot of energy into just ads, and you post stuff, it gets nowhere. And it doesn't seem like people are there. I don't use Snap. I know that's a certain like sliver of Gen Z are still like snapping. For written word stuff, Twitter is obviously, and people post videos on Twitter too, but the written word, Twitter is like, that's what it's really geared towards. And Instagram has always been confused because it's trying to chase sort of every other platform, and it keeps changing. So it used to be just like for images. Then it tried to do long form video to compete with YouTube, with IGTV. They changed that. Now it's Reels. So they're a little scattered, but I personally think Instagram is the best balance of social and media. You know, because TikTok is not that social. It's
and
more,
also, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but like also I feel like, you know, like you would go and you'd follow someone's Instagram, you know, like if you are tight with someone or you met them and you're like, oh, I want to see kind of what this person's doing, want to be involved in their life, maybe check out their stories day to day where they're doing comedy and stuff like that. You follow someone's Instagram. That's like the social kind of norm. You don't really follow someone's TikTok, really. I don't think.
Exactly. And also TikTok functions differently. Like TikTok has this For You page, which even your followers don't necessarily see everything you put out because everything still responds to some mysterious algorithm where if it performs well, and goes to followers and not followers alike. Instagram has, I still think is strong in that it's the standard and it's the way people, there's the DMs and voice notes and sending people things.
Right.
It has the social component to it and the media component to it, whereas TikTok is really media, and it's doing that better than everybody, like as your own channel to broadcast everything. And YouTube I like for the option of also being able to do more long form stuff and higher resolution stuff, because I can do the short form stuff and I throw up shorts too. So I'm posting on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. It's really usually the same stuff. If it's a short, I'm going across all three.
Yeah.
And then once a week, I try to do once a week if I can, once every other week, a longer video that's maybe 4 or 5 minutes with green screens and a whole thing. And that's exhausting, but I try to do that if I have a bit like a more high res sketch in mind.
Do you think that I saw that TikTok came out with 10-minute videos?
Yeah.
Do you think that this is going to wipe out Instagram? Are people really going to put that much, content on TikTok in long form like that? No YouTube, no Instagram?
I don't know. I'm not like good at the predictions of who. I just kind of know the only thing I can do is.
Well, you are good at predictions, right? You were talking about Instagram and TikTok and all the social media stuff back in 2004,
but
right?
that was the only one because I didn't want to.
Scary.
Because that was the first time I was aware of something that wasn't standard yet. Like I was being made aware of this new thing, TikTok, and instead of being an annoying like older millennial about it and being like, ugh, another one I have to post on? That's just a drag. What's this now? Instead I would try to be more positive and say, okay, what's TikTok? And I hated it when I first started. I was like,
that's like also what a lot of comics, like initially, like, I mean, I don't know if I was one of the later ones kind of on TikTok, but I didn't get on TikTok until like at least 9 or 10 months after, everyone really started getting onto it and people were going viral and such. But we don't really see a lot of YouTube action in terms of like comics being on YouTube. Like you'll see the TikTok, you'll see Instagram, you'll see Twitter, but I think like long form for comics, I don't know, there's not really a lot on YouTube. It's like you're either doing a podcast or you're doing maybe some sort of show vlog.
Yeah, like Schultz is a good ambassador for YouTube because that's where he built his audience. I think the best social media one is the one that you can do consistently so you can build your audience. And sometimes the universe is telling you like, hey, a lot of people are on TikTok, so if you're going to try one and you haven't started anything, try making TikToks and make your content, do what you do and make it in the TikTok space and see what happens. Andrew Schultz talked about how he built his audience off of YouTube because I don't think there wasn't anything yet. The only independent platform for broadcasting yourself was YouTube. Maybe Instagram was there, but it was still more, I think, pictures. And when he was building up his audience via
what year would you say?
I don't know the timeline, but I know I watched a TED Talk that Schultz gave about how he would put up these like hour-long sets and specials and no one would watch, but then he would put up clips in the form of like 2 minutes and people would watch for 4 hours. He started seeing that. He talked about it on a show called Colin and Samir, which is like they cover the creator economy. It's like this YouTube show. And it was really interesting because he talked about how he didn't want to act and he didn't want to go on the sitcom route, which is like you're a road comic and then people come and see you because you were in a commercial or you did MTV or you had a sitcoms and that's how you drew crowds. And then he was with like his nephew or something, and I'm getting the story a little bit wrong, but he was with his nephew who said like, I want to watch the game. It's on ABC. He said, can you put it on? And he's like, okay, what channel? He said like ABC. And he's like, okay, what channel is that? So the kid didn't even know what channel ABC was. And at that point, Andrew Schultz says he was like, okay, it's over. Like the network television world is over. That's not where the attention's going. I'm going to go online.
I saw a clip that he said about that. Like Netflix is done. It's all
like,
about YouTube.
I don't want to act. I don't want to act. And then he starts going like this and doing his podcast. He's like, I don't want to act.
With the socks too.
This is my Schultz impression. I don't want to act. I was like, factually, I knew it was over, and I had to go to YouTube. I was going to do YouTube because I don't want to act.
Yeah, he was a guy who's grown up with like a lot of comics that I was around for such a long time, and then it just seemed like his podcast kind of just blew up. I don't want to say overnight because I don't know how long.
So I don't think it really did. It seems like it did, but I think his real grind was building up his audience by releasing these shorter stand-up bits, and then instead of people not watching an hour-long bit in its set in its entirety, they were watching 4 hours of him binging on YouTube. So we started to kind of understand the YouTube formula early on in those days, and that's what was around. And I imagine if he was starting now at that point, he would be using TikTok to do the same thing.
You notice a lot of comics nowadays, if they're not getting like a big network, I don't even want to say network TV now. If you're not getting a Hulu, Amazon Prime, or a Netflix special, people are putting it on YouTube.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting, I think, to see how many people just go to YouTube automatically. And you're seeing like a lot of the older comics, anyone who's not getting I guess we can say network TV deal is putting it on YouTube. I mean, is YouTube going to start paying more? How's it going to work? I know it's like $10,000 per million views, and that obviously changes from creator to creator. But I mean, is YouTube just going to take over TV? I mean, I personally really only watch YouTube these days. Like I find that I can just go from video to video, and then the recommended is taking over my attention.
My understanding is YouTube already has won and taken over from TV. I was doing this like this shoot for content with these guys in their early 20s who grew up only watching YouTube. They did not watch TV. They watched Mr. Beast. You know,
I love Mr. Beast.
Yeah, so that's what they watched. Those were their shows growing up. That's the culture they grew up on. There wasn't TV culture. There weren't shows that they watched. They watched YouTube. So it's already won. And it's I mean
unless you have premium.
But I'm just saying in terms of the dominant space, like that has become the mainstream. Now, how YouTube compensates its creators, I think they're one of the better ones at it because you actually get paid and share in the revenue of AdSense. If you're monetizing your videos, you are sharing in that ad revenue with YouTube. And it's all a matter of, I think it's a matter of degree in terms of how much of a following you have and how many hours you're commanding of people on the platform, you're getting more money for it. And then I think it's really about leveraging that audience to either come to live shows, buy merchandise, do these other things. Just like we're in the space now where everything is paid by third party, like the direct service you're not paying for, but everything else is. So if you have an audience, if you have millions and millions of eyes on you, you have the ability to turn that into a sustainable career, because whether it's brand deals, whether it's ticket sales, whether it's all these things, whether it's just purely on the volume of views, you can make money on your content.
So how comfortable are you on stage now? How much time do you think you could do if somebody was like, all right, AJ, get up there and do as much time as you're comfortable with? Like tonight in Brooklyn.
Yeah, tonight in Brooklyn. Well,
I know tonight
it all
in Brooklyn
depends on
we
the
get like 10 minutes.
It all depends on the shtick. I stayed in character at Vee Con for hours, and I was totally fine. And I'm very comfortable with like improv.
What do you mean, just like walking around?
Totally. I trolled the whole conference just giving horrible advice.
What's up, fuckers?
I was like, okay, I know you guys are waiting for Series 1, but Series 3 is here to answer all of your fucking questions, right? So ask me anything you want. People would just come up to me, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I saw you did an interview with Sean Millay. Sean Millay came on the podcast. You guys remember that episode?
I remember Sean. Sean's got a really deep voice like this. You know?
Yeah. Gary, can I get a raise?
I'm thinking about getting a raise. So I'm thinking about doing this. Thinking about doing that. Sean's a good guy. I've seen that he does like stand up in the New York scene.
Yeah. He's doing our show tomorrow. If you guys, by the way, at Ted Jones Comedy Show, check the link in this YouTube video.
That's pretty cool. You know, he's got a really husky voice. I didn't see that coming. But I
Think about asking Ray. I mean, that's going to be a hard fucking no, dick, because you asked with expectation. Yeah, we had fun. That was cool. He took me down to the 137 room, or whatever it was, and we did a little post game interview as Gary and as myself.
Hilarious. Yeah, they have that new coffee shop that I visited the other week, 1:37 p.m.
Yeah. But again, my stand up world for me, I'm in that process of, you know, I heard Jerry Seinfeld was on the Tim Ferriss show and was talking about his process of, you know, good stand up. First and foremost revolves around good writing, which sounds obvious, but you know, you watch a lot of these guys that are loose up there and they're kind of doing crowd work and they're doing all these things. So you assume, you just get up there and do it. But I know better that it's hard to decipher, but it reminds me of like in the early days playing with bands, there were guys who were like, let's just jam like these jam bands, and it would all just fall apart. Because if you're not like at a high level of preparedness or everything is really crafted and worked out, you're not in a position to play and get loose. Mm-hmm. You know, all of a sudden there's a big difference between, you know, going to a Fish show and watching them improvise and get loose and get experimental, but they have like a foundation of what
that allows them to get loose.
So I'm building that foundation now, you know, and I'm just writing on a daily basis, coming up with the premises and writing it and testing it out live. And I'm in that process now of just wanting as much stage time as possible to get more familiar with the process of a joke that feels funny when you're writing it, how it experiments in the lab live, taking it back, refining it. And yeah, depending on the bit, like my sets can be much longer, because if I can, you know, when I'm in like the impression zone and that space, if I was doing something that called for it or where people understood, with impressions, it's a little tricky because impressions can be really great stand-up or they could also be a party trick, you know? So it's really about the writing and how you're setting up an impression that makes it really work well. And if an audience isn't familiar with it, that's a harder sell and harder to work out. You could still make it work. But again, I'm really focused on the writing process of working everything out to its, you know, strongest presentation.
So what do you think you're at right now?
I don't know. I have no idea. Tonight I'm probably doing 10 minutes. Yeah. Something like that.
And you're comfortable with that?
No, but I'll do it. I'm not ready to do like a half hour, and I have more than 5 minutes. I guess that's what I'll say. So like, cool. I have a lot of material, like a ton of stuff, but not enough. I haven't given it everything enough stage time to know where everything is in its final form. So they're all like these things that I think that I know will work. I just need to give them all the proper stage time. And the problem is like when there is a discrepancy between wanting to do like your tight 5 or tight 7 over and over again, so you know how much it could get, but also wanting to do new stuff. Yeah, you know. So like, what happens is you try new stuff, and then like you kind of default to what you've done 1,000 times.
And it goes back to what you're saying, the foundation. You know, whether it's like, I mean, for the most part, I do stand-up sets in this mirror every single day, and even if I don't have a show, I kind of notice like, oh, this particular thing was funny at this open mic in front of my mirror here at my apartment. So let's go and try it here. And then if it works how I think it's going to work, then I can add on during the show or whatever.
Yeah, I'm curious about that. Tell me about you've been doing stand-up how long?
Well, I have been in the stand-up game for probably like 3.5 years now, where I've just been doing sets. Like I started getting super serious about it 13 months ago, like I told you, after I retired from my dad's company. But I was taking improv classes for years, like in college, back here at UCB. And then right before the pandemic happened, I took 101, 201, 301, 401, which are like,
you never feel less funny than an improv class, right? At least in the beginning. Wow.
Well,
because the teachers are all like, okay, that was really funny. I'm like,
yeah, or
usually
tough,
human beings laugh, but I guess I'll take that.
Yeah, or it's tough sometimes. You just like want to be funny, and like the thing about improv is like be as normal as possible, which is tough because like exactly. And things on the stage, you're like, oh, this is too normal. Shit, we got to do something funny, and those are the things that kill.
I took one. There's always people like you can come across different people, and there's always people who in everything that they say are trying to prove that they're supposed to be
totally
there. And you're like, it's okay, man. It's okay. Like. You don't have to like fart when you talk.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
So switching from improv to stand-up really was, I'd say good portion of it was just because I wanted more stage time after the pandemic. Like UCB closed down in New York City. So I was devastated because of that. And I was supposed to be on the Lloyd team right around March 2020. Lloyd is like, you perform every other week in front of a huge stadium. I thought it was great. Stadium. It's like in Hell's Kitchen, 100 people, whatever.
Yeah.
But I wanted to just get more stage time.
Tomato.
And in order to do that, I mean, I really just needed to start doing stand-up more. And stand-up in the city, ever since the pandemic, it really feels like it came back hotter than ever. People love live performances. And during the pandemic, I went over to Asylum NYC, which is a few blocks away. And I just reached out to the artistic director there when shows were first coming back. I was like, hey, man, can I put together a show? He was like, yeah, okay. Like, you want to come check out the theater? And I was like, yeah, I went and toured the theater. I was like, oh, yeah. Like, he was like, oh, so you probably know that this is the green room. This is this is that. And I've never been to the theater before. So I was kind of like not playing dumb, but I was kind of playing coy. Like, okay, I've never been here before, but this guy thinks that I'm a big time comedian setup guy. So I put together a show, 9 comics. There were like 65 people there. Everyone that I knew came.
How did you fill the seat?
Just honestly, I think switching from my job as being like a property manager, people, I don't know if they wanted to support or they kind of just wanted to see what was going on. And also like,
so it's people who knew you were able to.
Yeah, it was people that knew me. And also one of the first shows coming back from pandemic, people all wanted to go and see live comedy. So the theater was at like 75%. We filled it up with 65 people, which felt like a ton. And then after I set up that first show, the owner of the stand I reached out to him. I was like, dude, you got to come to one of my shows. Like, they're sick. Like, I'm doing comedy now. So he's like, why don't you put together your show at the stand? He's an Italian guy. I don't know how good Italian that was. Whatever. So
this fucking guy,
Ted Jones. So put together a show 2 weeks later after that first show at Asylum. And then ever since then, I've just been putting together shows and getting more stage time. So initially it was putting together the Ted Jones Comedy Show and just kind of acting like I knew what I was doing. Because like I've been in the comedy game, like I've known people who've done comedy for so many years. Like my good friend Giulio Gallerati, who's friends with Jeremy Parker. They went to BU together. I've just been following him around at shows. Like he's 5 years older than me. As soon as I graduated college in 2014, I was just following him around. I met so many comics. So people in the comedy game like knew who I was. It was just like, when am I going to start? And when am I going to get up there?
How do you get over imposter syndrome? Be an imposter for a while until you're not.
It kind of felt like that. People just knew who I was just because I was around so much. And I had met people 4 years before I even shared the stage with them.
So you weren't even doing like the mic circuit. You went straight to just booking these shows and doing the shows in front of real audiences.
I'd say so.
Because I found that's interesting too. When I started doing mics, I remember like the first set I did in front of people. I don't remember. I think it was when I had done like some live comedy stuff, but going from like working stuff out at mics, I'd be like, man, okay. And then I showed up at a set. A friend of mine was performing at Brooklyn Comedy Club, and I did a set. Hey, can you do 7 minutes? Then I'm like, yeah. And I got up and I'm like, oh, people are laughing. Like, oh, the stuff is funny, but you'll never know coming from a mic because it's a
mics. I get nervous, man.
Yeah,
I mean, like
it's all comics.
I'm hitting a mic tonight. Sean Malay is going to be there.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's all comics. Like when you are at an open mic, I think people sometimes shy away just from like looking at your phone and reading the jokes. But I find that that's the best way to really improve at an open mic. You're like, okay, here are 8 jokes that I have that I wrote this week. Let's read them and see if these guys think it's funny.
I've always tried to not bring the notes, not because I knock it, but I'm always trying to practice not having notes.
Right. Well, at that particular time,
you actually want to test it.
Yeah, I'll get the note. If I get a laugh, okay, let's work at it in front of this mirror. And then if I don't get a laugh, I'm like, well, let's try it again. So I think having the notes have helped me. And then also I have found sometimes that if I do mic in the past and I wasn't getting any laughs in the first 2 minutes or something, I would just go back to old material that I was comfortable with.
That's what was happening. So I was like, crap,
well, I should not be doing this.
I didn't get to test the new bit at all.
Exactly. But I think also going from Ted Jones Comedy Show to other open mics, like I had a point where I was like, all right, I cannot get nervous. Like I don't even have the time or thought process to get nervous here. So it's kind of changed where now when I go to like a show that's somebody else's, I get more nervous than I would at any Ted Jones Comedy Show, just because I'm like, I have to bring the heat to Ted Jones Comedy Show. And while like my 12 to 15 minute set is probably 70% of the same that it was the time before that, I find myself constantly trying to
and
bring
what's
in
your
new
minute
bits.
mark that you feel like it's tight, every line is boom, boom, boom? Let me hear you say wayo, wayo.
Nobody's asked that, bro. And I've asked this question, like how comfortable guests are. But I think I can go in there and knock out a 20-minute set, knock it out of the park.
Nice.
If somebody was like, all right, Ted, go up there for 30 minutes, I'd be like, all right, okay,
Crowd
but
work.
I could go up there. Yeah, exactly. Crowd work.
Stretch things a little.
And I think hosting has really helped that.
Yeah,
you know, like just going on stage, showing the most energy, and like even watching back some of my sets, like I tape all my sets.
Right.
If it didn't go as well as I thought, maybe I lose a few words during the jokes. I'm always looking for my energy to be super high, because that's what like the audience feeds off of. Like people will just laugh just from like the body movements that I made at that particular time or the facial expression. So I think that I'm giving myself more of an opportunity to allow the audience to laugh at me or with me, whatever. I think that improv has really helped me with that.
Right.
You know, like I'm just going around, I'm doing normal things, saying normal things. Okay, there's a funny moment here. Oh, that person in the crowd is wearing glasses. You have 4 eyes. It's funny, whatever. Yes, obviously that person doesn't actually have 4 eyes. But I think being normal and giving yourself the largest opportunity to have the crowd enjoy your presence on stage.
And what are the tall tale signs of like a noob comic and a seasoned comic? What I've noticed, you can answer that too. I've noticed it's like I've caught myself in earlier sets like using filler words that are signs that I'm not confident in the bit, as opposed to just silence.
Exactly. Being like, I don't know, saying a joke and then somebody doesn't laugh and you're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Standing still, doing double hands on the mic. I think standing still is also a good tell sign that somebody's not comfortable on stage.
Right.
That's why, like, I mean, I'm very active on stage to the fault sometimes where like my dad will come to a show and be like, Ted, you need to stop moving around so much. Just because like I'm going from 10 feet that way, 10 feet that way. And when it's a huge stage, it could be great. But like
also depends on who came before and after and where the dynamic of the audience is.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
What does it
Well,
need?
for the most part, like at my shows, I'll have like a beatboxer, Dr. Brick, like you were kind of doing before. He'll come up, he'll do 3 to 4 minutes of beatboxing. Give it up for the host of Ted Jones World Podcast, Ted Jones Vlog, Ted Jones! And then boom, everyone's going nuts. I'm freaking firing up the crowd. Exactly, dude. You might have to. We might take Dr. Brick's job, dude.
Maybe we'll do a little duo.
I would love that. But I think it's just a matter of being comfortable on stage and having as many kind of dynamic ways about you. You know, there's so many great one-liner comedians. You look at guys like Jim Gaffigan, who's so different from Kevin Hart, who's maybe not so much different than
I don't know.
Cat
I was
Williams.
watching Jim Gaffigan the other day. Tell me about fried bread.
He did the Ted Jones Comedy Show, by the way, one time. I was
Jim?
freaking the fuck out. Yeah,
Oh,
when he came.
here, right in this room?
At the Stand. At the Stand, New
that's
York
nice,
City. So
man.
they have
Oh, it's great writing. You could just see it. It's a really great writer.
yeah, they have people stop by all the
I
time
don't
over
know.
there.
He's always kind of yawning and then gets deeper.
And that's an example of a guy who, like, you see him and he's so quick with his jokes, but maybe you'd see him and you'd be like, that's a specific type of comic, because it's hard to kind of do that particular type of comedy and be comfortable up there and know that your jokes are going to hit. Not that you don't have to make a facial expression to make your jokes hit. Do kind of an act out to make your jokes hit. So I do have so much appreciation for that, but I think there's so many different types of comedy these days, man.
And you know what I find interesting is it's unfortunate, but it's like, I think I just saw Mark Norman talking about this, where he's like, there's no mentorship or school or craft with
that
it's
too.
like comedy. You just gotta oh, just write the joke and then, oh, it doesn't, and then don't
Comedy.
comedy. But you more that like with, coming from the music world, he described it like, this is how you play an A, this is how you play a C, this is C minor, move the finger this way, this technique is wrong, try it this way. There's a lot of that, and that seems almost faux pas in comedy, like educate. I mean, it's not once you get into the game, but it's not as, I find that it's not as expressed openly.
People don't take comedy classes. People take music classes.
Yeah, and it's like the craft of joke writing is a real thing. And yet, other than the learning on the streets, other than like just being in the clubs and talking with friends and running bits by each other, I'm very much, my creative mind is very sort of technical. I like taking things apart. Like, that's funny. Why is it funny? What worked about it? Turning the word up this way, pausing before I hit this line. So I'm very the same way I am with music. Like, I like the conceptual stuff and like hearing a chord that's beautiful. Oh, why is it beautiful? What is going on? Let me demystify it so that I can recreate it. So I'm trying to apply that process to comedy, but there's just less, there's less traditional educational approach to comedy. It's more like get out there, put yourself through it, and then kind of figure it out.
Totally. Because to be honest, if I was going up there and I was trying to kind of do the same stuff as Jim Gaffigan, I don't know. I don't think I would be as successful, looking right for the punchline. And there's just so many different types. You go to all these
and fried bread.
You go to all these shows and you'll see so many different types of comics. And that's the beautiful thing about comedy, man. Like, you can go to a show, you can go to a free show in Brooklyn on a Thursday night at 10 p.m. and you can laugh harder than you've ever laughed before, which is an amazing thing. And I really do think that improv helped me so much in taking the leap to stand-up comedy, just because like I had a background in trying to act as normal as possible while going on stage and being as crazy as possible.
And how about your bomb to not bomb ratio?
I would say that...
When did you see that change?
Yeah, that's interesting, man. I'd say that I'm bombing a lot less when I am going up and doing the stuff that I know will work. Sometimes I'll bomb maybe more. So I wouldn't say I bomb that much, but I would say like some of the material won't work or bomb when I'm not prepared and I haven't done it before in front of a crowd. So I'd say like I've gotten to the point where I'm super comfortable with 70% of my set always, like no matter where I am. But then there's that 30% that I'm either going to try and tweak some stuff or maybe I'll miss out on some of that 70%.
I had a set that I was proud of because it was certainly, it was definitely a bomb, but I wasn't bothered by it because I did what I was supposed to do. In a way, and I know it's the comedian's job to get the audience on their side and all of that, but I also didn't shy away from any of the bits. I leaned into them more, and I think it was happened to be an odd kind of room, for stand-up,
that also happens.
where they're sitting. There's not a lot of people, so it doesn't have that like contagious laughter energy. And I was doing some kind of certain impression stuff and specific stuff, and the crowd was a little more woke.
Was it like higher ceilings?
A little bit. It was just a little. It was like a theater kind of room kind of thing, but it was also like, I think I did like a Jordan Peterson impression, and the crowd was very woke and really hated Jordan Peterson, and I wasn't like crapping.
That guy.
So I was like,
it's controversial shit. But.
No, I think I said something to the effect of, I did a Gary Vee bit where I said, I tried to do a thing where it was like, Gary Vee's amazing because people ask him all sorts of complicated questions, and he gives very simple answers. Someone will come and say, Gary, my house is being foreclosed on, and my wife left me. My business is falling apart. I don't know what to do. Humility. That's fucking amazing. Humility. Right? That's his answer. Humility. And then Jordan Peterson's the opposite, where he gives incredibly complicated answers to very simple questions. So people will be like, Jordan, how are you? Well, it's like, I don't really like the way the question is formulated. What do you mean by how? That all depends on the various archetypal presuppositions of how and are and being. You could be talking about one's physical self, but there's also a soul. And it's like, so that's what I would say. So you're like, I tried to stitch that together, but the audience really hated Jordan. And then what I did was, because that was like my closing bit, which has done really well in other crowds, I just did a new one to end it. I went into a new bit entirely. I'd never even mic'd or tested out before, which was like Johnny Depp, Amber Heard related.
It was off the top of your head?
Yeah, which did well. So I was like, and my point is this set had its weird moments, but I kind of just leaned into them and did like a trust connect kind of thing. Yeah. Trust the bits, go through with it, lean into them a little harder. Don't let the silence sort of like defeat you or be this weight, kind of push through. And then it kind of did work. So I was happy with that.
You really have to
Like a
appreciate the
successful
silence
bomb.
sometimes. Yeah, successful bomb. As long as like you've done the most up there. And yeah, sometimes the quietness I think is like to address it or to even know that like, oh yeah, that one in particular wasn't great. Even letting the audience know that you're in the, you're human with them, I think. And that helps with improv too.
And haven't you ever watched a comedian bombing, but you're cracking up? Like, you ever watch a recording of a set and no one's laughing? But you're like, this is the funniest shit ever.
Yeah, like even at smaller shows, like sometimes I'll watch comics and they'll be going through new bits, and then at the end of the bit, if no one laughs, they're like, all right, well, we're taking that one back. Like that is funny in itself. Making fun of the joke itself. So people sometimes don't get that you can do that. You're allowed to be human up there. You're allowed to bring up your phone or check a note at a particular time. Maybe not when you're like a huge showcase or a huge show on a big theater, Netflix or whatever. But for the most part, you're always going up there and always trying to be funnier from the last time.
If you watch like really good Bill Burr sets and specials, like there's always these moments where he just calls it out. Look how awkward it is in here right now, dude. And and it's like he just leans right into that space. So that's always been something that stuck out to me. It's like you remember Bill Burr did SNL, and you're like, it's so uncomfortable. He did SNL, hosted a few months ago, and he talked about, he just did his thing. And in an SNL kind of wokey crowd, they didn't know what to do with it. So there's like these scattered laughter. And he's like, what? Dude.
In the monologue?
Dude, yeah. Dude, what? I mean, come on. Dude. You women were sitting in the hot tub right there with us. You took your little Gucci boot, you stuck it over here, started doing, and it's just, but me as the audience watching from a computer, I'm dying. Even if the audience in front of him might say, well, I was bombing on SNL. Like, I don't know if he would say that, but the point is sometimes it's not the comedy, so I always have that debate in my mind. Like, is it the comedian's job to always get to crush the room, or is it, just this, I don't know. That's a deeper question.
No, that is a deep question.
Anyway.
Because I mean, it's just I think you got to do what you have been planning on doing. Go up there and expect to do what you've been practicing and doing for so long.
Right. Yeah.
AJ, thank you so much for coming on the Ted Jones World Podcast. Guys, this guy is freaking hilarious if you guys couldn't tell by watching this video or listening. And yes, we do have video on Spotify. How exclusive. Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, wherever you guys listen to this podcast. Make sure you leave a review, write a comment, and follow this guy. AJ, why don't you give him the deets, please?
Follow me at AJ-Comedy on all platforms, TikTok, Instagram, stroke it. Little hetero love right there. AJ-Comedy on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Also, Ami Kozak Official. That's the other name. Sometimes people can't find it. But anyway, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, AJ-Comedy, Ami Kozak Official. Ted, thanks for having me.
And AJ will get to the Ted Jones Comedy Show July. We'll figure out which date, right?
Sounds good.
AJ, thank you so much, bro. And guys, we'll see you soon. Peace.